So, hello and a very good evening, friends, fellow professionals, architects, interior designers, trade members, students, and design enthusiasts. I am architect Satish Desai. I am a part of Triple ID Managing Committee Bangalore. On behalf of Triple ID Bangalore Regional Chapter, it is my pleasure and honor to welcome you all to our first episode of Unmasked Season 2. After a successful webcast of the Season 1 of Unmasked, we are excited to bring to you rich and diverse panelists to further our learning and inspiration during these hard times. Today's session is titled The Practice, featuring architect Sandeep Khosla and architect Amaresh Anand of Khosla Associates, moderated by architect Kavita Shastri. Our special thanks to today's sponsor, Quattrolux, a joint venture of PC Sampath and Ram Ceramics, represented by Ms. Ambika. Hello, Ambika, and thank you so much for being on our side, lending a helping hand to social contribution in these challenging times. Could you please greet our audience through a short introduction?
Hi, Satish. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me this evening. It's always a pleasure to be a part of a Triple ID event and with so many respected architects from our city. I'm Ambika from Quattrolux. Quattrolux is a new venture between two established retail companies in Bangalore, PC Sampath, Ram Ceramics. We have been in the surfaces and sanitaryware industry for over 50 years now, and we have two showrooms in Bangalore where we showcase our handpicked collection. One is in HSR layout and one is in St. Mark's Road. And we have recently renovated our St. Mark's Road showroom, Ram Ceramics. And to say the least, it is a state-of-the-art showroom with live units where we have showcased our top quality products from the best brands in the industry. I invite you all to come drop by whenever you're in the area. You definitely won't be disappointed. Our short presentation to follow will give you an insight of the products and brands we deal with. Thank you again for your time and enjoy the evening.
Thank you, Ambika. Before I hand over the virtual stage, let me begin with a short introduction of today's panelists. Khosla Associates is not new to all of us. I mean, all of us know them. It's a leading architectural interior design firm based in Bangalore, India. It was established by architect Sandeep Khosla in 1995. The firm, headed by Principal Sandeep Khosla and partner and Principal Amaresh Anand, create a versatile body of work ranging from architecture and interiors of residences, offices, and institutions to retail and hospitality spaces. They have, in the past 25 years of practice, won over 30 national and international awards, including the Inside Outside Designer of the Year Award 2010. They were the education category winner at the WAF Inside Festival 2013 in Singapore and winner of WAN House of the Year 2017 in London. Architectural Digest has named Khosla Associates as one of the most influential names in Indian subcontinent for 7 years in a row, 2014 to 2020. It's my pleasure and honor to introduce them. Khosla Associates' distinct style of tropical architecture uses local materials and concepts, but reinterprets them with a unique and contemporary design sensibility. The firm's interest in global local trends in fashion, lifestyle, graphic design also is reflected in their varied palette of bar, restaurant, office, hotel projects across India. And now to introduce our moderator today, Kavita Shastri is an alumnus of BMS College of Engineering. Now I understand that even Amaresh is alumni of BMS. Her design philosophy is a simple marriage of form and function, aesthetics and practicality, using elements that are organic, natural, and sustainable. She usually loves a bit of drama, be it through art, a quirky piece of furniture, or lighting design. You may have seen this flair in the iconic chandeliers at Chianti restaurants in Bangalore. In 2016, she initiated Code Studio, the Triple ID from Triple ID Bangalore that focuses on doing pro bono design projects for communities, community projects in Bangalore, which this is a collaborative studio that has completed numerous government schools, orphanages, including restoration of 107-year-old government school in Murphy Town. So over to our presenters for today. I am looking forward to this as much as all the other audience. Over to you, gentlemen and lady.
Thank you, Satish, for that wonderful introduction. All I would like to tell everybody is that you're in for a real treat. So let's get started. But let's start at the beginning. Sandeep and Amaresh, welcome. Tell us something about how you met. Tell us about, how you got the practice started, and what were the things that brought you both together.
Thank you, Kavita, and it's a pleasure being here as to kind of take part in this webinar with Triple ID. It's been a while since we've done something with Triple ID. So when you asked us, I said we must, especially for the Bangalore chapter, kind of engage. I'm just going to go back to the early years. This is a shot of the office in its old avatar. Now it's been brought down and rebuilt in Indranagar. And an early shot of the spiral staircase which connected all the floors. And the staircase was an important part and still remains an important part of the office because it connected architects, interior designers, and my wife Tanya's graphic design studio, TSK. So there was a collaborative atmosphere from day one in the studio. Some of my early kind of inspirations, I got back from Pratt Institute after studying architecture, came back and went to Mumbai and joined Charles Correa as an associate. And Charles Correa's architecture, tropical, with open to sky spaces, permeable spaces that could breathe, let the breezes in. That is the kind of architecture that appealed. Further trips and meeting with Jeffrey Baba in Sri Lanka further inspired me in those early years. And it kind of cemented a kind of architecture that I wanted to practice very, very early on. That was responsive to climate. It was contextual. It had a wonderful relationship between built form and the natural environment. So these were some of the early years, and this is the first house we got commissioned really as far as 97 or 98. This was an English couple, the Mannerings, who commissioned our firm to do this house, one of the first houses of a certain design vocabulary, vernacular sloping roofs, and local materials like Mangalore and Kerala tiles, and a wonderful courtyard that actually let the breezes into this house. So it's been a really quite a special house. Even today, one goes there and has nothing has really changed in the house, and it kind of endures even after 20 years. But this is the kind of architecture which was very important in those days, because one was coming to Bangalore, the climate was wonderful, and one said, why not have an architecture or do a practice an architecture which was responsive to that environment with and climate. Amrish, you want to come into this, because I know this is a client dear to us.
Yeah. Also, well, when I studied in BMS and then I finished, I was looking around to kind of be associated with somebody with a similar kind of philosophy, similar kind of mindset, and through common friends, I had heard about Sandeep just returning, and he's doing some very unique work. And well, we met and we kind of hit it off. We worked for about a couple of years as an associate and junior, and then when the point came to the point to understand where one would go from here, we had already established a very nice rapport, and and so and then the story, like the cliche says, the rest is history. So it's been more than 20 years now that Sandeep and I are working together. We are more of family than working partners, you know. And sorry, yeah.
Yeah, and we are our best. We are each other's sounding boards, and it's great to ideate on all aspects of the project together. This is so we've had this really wonderful working relationship over these 20 years. I also must mention in the early years, the first 5 years, correct me if I'm wrong, Anshul Choda, who founded Sanctuary, he was also part of the office, and both Amaresh and Anshul were my associates at that point, and we had some really wonderful years of
Fun
creating
moments.
creating great projects. Um, and what's interesting is that we were doing calm and contemplative architecture, and then we suddenly got the opportunity to do bars and restaurants in the city in those early years, and one was long-lived architecture which was timeless, and then we were doing these uh, um, build, working in recycling kind of colonial buildings and doing bars and restaurants which had to have a wow factor, which was short-lived, which had to get the maximum amount of money for the owners in a very short time. Um,
So
and
in a sense, you were repurposing these colonial structures into a more current, use.
I think really recycling these buildings. This was a friends of ours, Jay and Roshni, who had just moved from New York, and they commissioned us to do 180 proof. But this building on St. Mark's Road, which everyone knows as Hard Rock right now, this was fashioned by us 3 times. This was 180 proof. Then we did a Barista here. Barista wanted to do a flagship store, if you remember that. It was early the HMV house, and then
Yes.
finally in its current avatar, it's Hard Rock Cafe. So it's the same building which we've enjoyed working on for many years. And but what's unique is that this was the first interior project we ever did, 180 proof, and it was an instant hit, and there were several hundred people banging on the doors to get in those days, because there was not much. It was a city full of English pubs at that time, and this was the first American style kind of bar lounge, so to say. But what was excellent was those days where there was just so much freedom to experiment architecturally and, yeah, within these spaces, and really with a lot of freedom and excitement, kind of come up with unique and innovative solutions. And it was also a time when Bangalore was going through a phase where all the colonial houses, due to a lack of Heritage Act, they were all kind of coming down one by one. This was a project called Spin, if you all remember, in Bangalore, where we repurposed this colonial house, which was really about to be torn down. Half of it, in fact, had been torn down, and we said, let's try and save the other half, and then we created this nice lounge bar and discotheque in those days. So these were really fun years. This is Roxy at the Park Hotel in Kolkata a few years later. But it was, the use of LED lighting in those days, new materials.
Also, this was also almost 100-year-old building, right, Sandeep? This part was a godown.
Yeah, absolutely, in Kolkata. Yeah, so I think working with old, with the truth and honesty of certain materials in those days, like the existing slabs, the existing brick walls of the godown, but then kind of working with these innovative forms. This was a hovering form suspended within the space. So we were really happy to do all kinds of crazy things. And this is this is the office as it is now, and we celebrate festivals and we come together in this really lovely spirit of, uh, of being together on nice occasions. This is, I think, last Diwali.
So I can see that there are a lot of horns that you've designed, and being a Bangalore girl, these were some of our favorite horns as well. Hard Rock Cafe, Spin. Growing up, it was, like you said, a crazy time, and it was a fun time, yes. But this brings me to my next query. What have been, your favorite projects that you would single out for maybe maybe because of the site or the constraints, or some experience with a client, some anecdote that you could share with us that made the project special?
Right. Um, I'm going to take you through a few which have been quite seminal. Uh, Maybe, and I think there's obviously a reason why I show a few of these. There are many, many favorite projects, many, many favorite clients, but I think a few might stand out only due to the fact that we were able to break certain boundaries and think out of a box in a certain way in these homes. So this is a house which most of you would be familiar with. It's on a cliff, a 200-foot cliff in Kerala, overlooking the coconut fronds and the Arabian Sea. And we had this lunging, a 200-foot skewed concrete wall with this lightweight canopy roof, kind of just a wonderful emotive response to the site. And the client was, who's no more, the first house I showed, the Mannering house, her husband. He was an Ayurveda enthusiast who would visit this part of Trivandrum quite often, and he wanted this house to kind of do meditation and yoga and overlook this gorgeous spot. And he obviously wanted a very, very large pool. Um, so most of the house is kind of open to the elements from the side. It lets the breezes in very beautifully, and there's an airiness. The breezes kind of come in from the sea, and Amrish, maybe you could talk maybe about the windows and.
So when the client actually here, Mike really helped us, kind of defy all odds. There's not an inch of glass used in this project. There's no air conditioning in this project. Okay, so he allowed us to, think with a free mind and come out with something that is really in sync with your surroundings, with the nature. So we had to, then when he said that he doesn't want air conditioning, we were very happy. And then we said we had to also look at devices that every room was well ventilated, cross ventilated through the year. And also Kerala was traditionally very, rich in its carpentry, from the old wooden buildings to their boat building, etc. And we had an excellent carpentry team on site. And so we looked at the traditional system of window, which was the louvered system, and then we kind of modernized it by this new hardware. We had the access to the new hardware these days, like the right hardware, and we devised this sliding folding windows, which could open up completely and let the breezes blow through the house during the non-rainy seasons. And during rainy season, you can shut the windows, but you can leave the louvers open, so the breezes still flow in. And also note that we decided not to, since we didn't have any glass and didn't have any air conditioning, everything was about capturing the natural breezes. We also had the question of mosquitoes. So we convinced Mike, who was an Englishman, to sleep under a machardani in a 4-poster bed, which was, he took it very well. And those are the kind of nuances, and those are the kind of experiences on this project which also helped us grow as thinkers as well as experiment with all these crazy ideas. And
what was the site like? I mean, it looks fabulous.
It was a coconut grove actually.
So how long did the project take?
Oh,
Kind of, how, I mean,
that's another story altogether. the project, I think, took about 7 years to complete.
4 contractors.
3 contractors or 4 contractors, Amaresh?
4 contractors. Finally, it was a Bangalore contractor who finished it for us.
okay.
So it was actually quite a challenge given the unions there and architects from Bangalore, the client from London, England. And so, in fact, there are some crazy stories about during the construction, how.
Can you advance the slide, please?
The next one.
Yeah, I'll do that.
And how often would you go for site visits?
Site visits were quite often for reasons that, because this was quite a crazy in its design, and we had to work very closely with the carpenters to devise these.
You can stop it at the next slide, and Amaresh will tell you a nice story about this.
With the pool, yeah. So it was like, with the unions, we had a crazy time.
Yeah.
And once I think Mike, one of the contractors started demanding extra money than what was signed off on the BOQ, and he was very upset, and he couldn't understand how you can't abide by a signed contract. So he was in London, I was in Bangalore. He would call me on the phone, and he was like, expressing his anguish. And suddenly he said, "Oh shit, hi, I'll call you back." I said, "What happened?" "I just crashed my new Ferrari." He was so frustrated.
Okay.
And then there's another crazy story about the pool. You see in the slide was the setting out of the pool. So before this, Sandeep and me landed on the site, and that site visit, we were going to decide the depth of the pool, the width of the pool, and basically what we had. And we had a modest size of about 1,500 or 2,000 square feet pool in our original design. But when we landed there, we saw that Mike was already standing there and procrastinating, looking out into the horizon. And I said, "Okay, guys, let's do the marking of the pool." And so, well, the pool was already marked actually, and said, "Yeah, this is the size of the pool." He said, He just then he asked the guy to bring a peg stand at the edge of the pool that we had marked, and then he just asked him to walk towards the cliff and told him to stop when I asked you to stop. So he was literally near the edge of the cliff, and he asked him to stop, and he said, "I want the pool to be this size." Sandeep and me looked at each other and then said, "What's going on? This is like a massive pool. And it's also close to the cliff, to the edge of the cliff." So we convinced him that, it can't be that close to the cliff for safety reasons, because of soil erosions, etc., etc. We had to also look at that aspect later in the project. And then he finally agreed to come a few steps back. And eventually it was a 4,500 square feet pool. And finally, Sandeep and me, after the project was finished, we were taking a dip in the pool, and then again looked at each other and said, "This is like swimming in the ocean. Mike, we now can figure out why you wanted this size of a pool."
Satish, you can make me the presenter again. It's figured out. Yeah.
So this was like that's why this is one of our favorite projects, because we had hair-raising moments, we had heart-wrenching moments, and then now it's just pleasure. Everybody who goes there comes back saying that this has been, it's a magical space, so to speak.
Yes.
So that was, of course, our infinity pool moment. I think as architects and young architects, we all dream of doing that wonderful infinity pool. This is another project, retreat in the Sahyadris, which is on the Western Ghats, another stunning property, facing the Pavna Lake. And I think why is this so special? Why does it mean so much to us, this project? I think it broke a lot of notions of what a holiday home could be or should be. You know, we've had so many clients wanting to build extremely large holiday homes where they only go sometimes for the weekend or once a month. So this was a young couple and their two kids. They wanted to go from Mumbai to Pavna, and they wanted a fairly modest house. We in fact did one scheme which was much larger, and then we all realized that it was too big, and we did a second scheme, and thank God for that, because I think we really understood what was required from the program. You know, they just required, this is just a 2,400 square foot pavilion with 2 bedrooms. So it has two real primary spaces, an extroverted space looking out into the view, and an introverted space. This is the extroverted space, the kitchen area, the living, dining. They wanted to cook on their own with the family, step out into a deck and the pool and the view, and then the introverted zone, which were really the bedrooms, which you would retreat to at night. And the other aspect of this house was that because it was a single level pavilion, we wanted to bring in a nice quality of natural light, of north light, and we devised these beautiful skylights, which would mimic the mountainscape around, and so that was really a kind of a lovely feeling to connect with the environment around. And Amrish, you want to talk a bit about the materials?
Yeah, actually, yeah, while we were also discussing with the clients that they would go there on weekends and probably, couple of times in a month, he really did stress upon the fact that he wanted a completely maintenance-free home. And while we were kind of designing and discussing this, we also realized that we were sitting in an area which was abundant in volcanic basalt stone, and so we thought, why don't we clad the stone over the building? Not only will it help in maintenance, that you don't have to ever paint the building, but also stone is an insulator. So summers are hot there, so it also keeps the building cool during summers. And we pretty much quarried the stone from the foundations, that when we were digging up the foundations, and the deficit was collected from the fields from about 50 kilometers around the property. And also there's a crazy story on the skylights actually in this. We designed this really, we were so excited when we came out with the form of the skylight, and because it was kind of the quality of light that was going to come in was beautiful, because it was diffused in it. Because of its shape, it would diffuse the light further to come into the space. So we were quite excited, but then when we realized that the site is in a remote place, people actually were running away from that site. The work staff used to run away from that site because it was so remote and they were scared. And finally, when we started construction, how are we going to get? And there are no equipments there, like your, all your fancy survey equipments and stuff. Nothing was there. It was all quite basic. So how do we? Then we realized that it was getting quite complicated to make the form work carpenters understand how to shape this skylight. So we had to actually make miniature models of each one of these, send it to the site. They would make a counter model. So then we understood that they understood, and only then it transformed into a actual size, actual scale. The other interesting thing was also further, even though this was on the bank of the Pavna lake, and there was so much water in the lake, you can't really draw water from the lake. It's illegal. So there is actually a scarcity of water, and we were on top of the hill. So even the landscape design that we kind of thought about here was species of plants, no lawn, all mostly hardscape, so that there's no consumption of water unnecessary. There's natural consumption from the rains itself, which will kind of sustain the landscape.
There's another beautiful story that Amrish and I landed up on site one day, and the contractor had actually raised up all these walls just about a foot below the roof slab, and we said just hold it there, and that's how we got this beautiful detail, because we said let's just let the house breathe, 24 hours. And so we created this lovely slit, which is actually got mesh, so the breezes actually just blow through the house, and the house really never gets musty. um, and so you can see that detail actually in the bathrooms, and it's actually right through the house. There is a lovely kind of relief between the walls and the roof slab. And what was
So it's
also,
it's
yeah,
a
it is
gap. There is a gap. It's a continuous gap running
the
all over the
continuous.
wall.
There's a
Yeah.
continuous gap on the periphery running right through, and there's a mesh in that gap, so the breezes actually flow right through.
Even
The
the
other,
internal
yeah,
walls, even the internal walls have that gap, so that the air breezes can actually flow through the
To the
entire
entire.
house. Yeah.
also the materials, were very humble in a way, and but we didn't want to do much more than the materiality. So the architectural, the choice of materials was very important, because they had to be durable, and they had to resonate with the environment, and also the interior narrative, the choice of interior accessories, furniture, materials. We said let's keep it local, so they were all kind of sourced from Nasik or other places in Maharashtra. So copper vessels and bidri ware and other elements. There's a very tactile quality to this house, because of the materials. The two different levels of kota stone on the floor, the river finished and the polished kota, the polished cement on the walls, the timber, the skylights were actually naturally oiled ply, nothing else. There's no veneer on the skylights. It's just oil, and then there's cotton steel. So overall, a really fulfilling project, and our clients are really enjoying going there, every weekend, and they really enjoy their time there. And this is the last slide in this, which really shows the impact, because as you go on the landscape, because as you go down the slope to the lake, the house almost disappears, and that's the kind of footprint or that we wanted, that if one was actually staring up at the mountain, you would hardly see the house.
It just blends into its surroundings.
um, the same patron, Annabelle, uh, she commissioned us to do a school. And Amresh, why don't you
Yeah.
take on?
This is again another interesting story. Annabelle, over the years, became a dear friend of ours. And every September, from during Christmas and New Year, Sandeep and I take our annual holiday. She landed up in the office in the beginning of September, said, "You guys have to pull me out of a crisis." I said, "We said we are architects. What can we do to pull you out of your crisis?" So she said, I've taken this franchisee for DPS, but I didn't realize that I had to put up my first school by April, and I have to open it for admissions." And we were like, "Animal, that gives us with hardly any time, because we are in December. We have to finish design and then start the school by April." So anyway, we took on the challenge. We cancelled our holidays, went on to our drawing board, and we started off. We actually, we realized that once you're thrown in a corner, you actually come out with ideas out of the box. And we designed this inside out, actually. We looked at the structural. We also had a very stringent budget, note that as well. We had very stringent budget. So we looked at the structural system first, the skeleton of the building, and started designing from the skeleton. We made a simple bay of 4 columns, so 8 columns per class, and then that, like a Lego set, could be expanded horizontally and vertically. The second layer then was the skin. We didn't have time or the money to build walls, plaster them, and paint them in a traditional way. So we had to look out for materials that could be used off the shelf and redefine them. So we looked at the puff paneled roofing material as walls because the puff insulation allowed us to have that acoustic isolation that the classrooms needed. We were going to the site once and noticed that, the site's in Hoskote, slightly on the outskirts. And many of the houses in the around there, like the villages, had these little jalis. And we then found where the jalis were available. So we picked up that. And then also there was another interesting part. While all this was happening, we were actually building the compound wall for the property. And we were using the precast compound, the panels. So we looked at that one day and then said it was in 1 foot by 6 feet, I think those panels were. And we used that as treads for the steps, the leftover from the compound wall. So we had to literally, put a kit of parts that were readily available, redefine them completely.
And when you're building so fast, we had to build this within 6 months, 35,000 square feet. And it was rapid construction going on. And this could have become a very, very brutal project, so much concrete, and
Metal sheet.
for these young children. So what we really looked for inspiration was color, which I think all kids respond to, and then the saturated Indian colors that people grow up with in their psyche, at least in South India. Your architecture, your temples, and your festivals. So we use these kind of saturated colors as this corrugated sheet around the courtyards, and the courtyards really became the soul of the school, and a lot of the learning kind of spilled outside the classroom, and it brought really a level of cheer to this building, and everyone stepped out. Teachers would step out. There was a playground in the courtyard. The shows would happen facing the courtyard. The daily morning assembly would happen there. So I think it all in all worked out really well, and the spaces really became quite cheerful because the light and the air was just lovely. We didn't have any money for air conditioning of the school. We didn't even have money for the interiors of the school. So we had to make do with, plastic tables and chairs that they had. But all in all, I think the architectural quality of the spaces and the materials actually lend itself to the interiors. And actually, this project won us the best education category, was the education category winner at WAF inside in Singapore.
And we finished the project. The school opened for admissions, and the budget was $1,200 a square foot.
That's really wonderful. It's such a bright and vibrant space. Very inspiring.
So again, this is out of the box thinking, and so this is another project which, for some reason, we've had mixed feelings over the years because we were supposed to do the architecture and the interiors of this project, but we're going back to this again and again as just a fantastic experience that Amaresh and I had. This was an uninhabited island in one of the south atolls of the Maldives. So you'd have to go from Malé, and then you have to take a plane to a South Atoll airport, and then from there take a boat to this island. Very, very remote, soft, powdery sand, as all Maldives islands are. And we were commissioned to kind of do the architecture of the entire resort. So there were these 18 overwater villas and land villas. But what really struck us was the environment, and there was a great deal of responsibility on our shoulders, saying that we cannot muck up the corals because these corals are live, and you have to kind of preserve it. So we worked very closely with biologists, with ecologists to ensure that what we were building and where we were building would not mess up the corals, and we were and to build in a sustainable way with thatch, with timber, with villa board, things that were dismantlable. Um, uh, so this was a great learning, but because of the nature of the project, it was so remote. Each and every nail and you know, can of Fevicol had to be imported, and that's why the room night in the Maldives is so expensive, and each of these villas are about $1,500 a night. It's just because we really understood what it takes to build a resort in that environment. So this is our water villas, and we had these great experiences going all over South Asia. Actually, this was the mock-up of the villas. We had a full-scale mock-up in Malaysia at the contractor's warehouse, so that we could understand each of the scale of all the spaces, and really kind of then commit to the villas. Um, Amrish, you want to talk about this experience? Yeah.
So when we first landed on the site, it, it was like, I don't know how many of you all have watched Lost those days. So it was like landing, it was so surreal. The closest civilization was many, many miles away. So that's what, like Sandeep said, that was when we realized that we have a great responsibility in how we kind of, handle this project. Further, when we realized after the design was done and we were ready to roll, we realized every single component had to be imported and landed on the site. But then there are no roads to the site. Your only approach is water. So even before the start of construction, we actually had to build a jetty first, so the boats could dock and unload material and men. And then the other aspect was this project was going to take anywhere between 2 to 2.5 years. The people working there are literally trapped on an island. You need to keep them motivated. You need to keep them psychologically, healthy, that they don't feel tired or fatigued or want to go back home, because they can, yeah. So the first thing we actually did was to put up this whole beautiful entertainment living quarters for the staff, and then get into the construction of our project. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And I tell you, I mean, I think both Sandeep and me cherish this as one of our favorite projects for the experiences that we have had. The learnings that we have taken from here. Everything had to be detailed to the T in our drawings. That would be quantified and procured and executed on site. So our drawings had to be extremely thorough. But all in all, then it did, give us all the satisfaction in the end.
Yeah. So these are the pool villas, and this project, actually we built it for the people who commissioned us. Then what happens is operators come on board, and in the past 12 years maybe 3 operators have changed. Currently it's the Raffles group that is operating it, and before this it was the Jumeirah Meradu. So this is a view of our beach villas. So absolutely spectacular environment, and it was a privilege to work there. And that's really from the helicopter, a view of the island. So we really tried our best to. This is the island, with like a kind of a tear-shaped island, and then 400 meters away from the island, we found this beautiful lagoon, and we said, let's put the water villas on that lagoon. So logistically, you can imagine it was really a nightmare. So hotel guests had to go from island to lagoon. They would go by speedboat, and the service, we had to have a separate kitchen feeding just the water villas. But of course, this is a high-end resort, so they had butler service and all that kind of stuff. So we could kind of dream up this.
Yeah.
Amrish? Yeah.
This is again something that was recent and very close to our hearts. One of my childhood friends, who's a hotelier, used to always talk to Sandeep and me and say that, I want to work with you guys, but I want to come to you only when I have something special. And after maybe 6 or 7 years, one day he called me and he said, I've got some. I mean, meet me at Indian Express. I've got something for you. So we met him, and Indian Express was always, I mean, a building, an iconic building, as all of us Bangaloreans know. We've grown up with this building. It was a kind of a meeting point for several of us. From there, we would head to the bars or the movie theaters or even airlines for that matter. So I thought, okay, he's asking me to just meet there, and then he would take me somewhere else. He never mentioned anything about the project. Then we landed there, and then he said, "Come inside." And he said, "This is the project I want you guys to do with me." And we were like, "Wow!" It was like beautiful. I mean, first of all, it's an iconic building. The volume inside was tremendous when we walked in. There were these old printing machines there, and we said, okay. And then when we started putting our thinking cap together, we said, let's not actually play on the fact that it was a printing press, because that would be quite predictable, so we actually then realized that this building was built during the Art Deco time, and Art Deco is, I think, both Sandeep and one of our favorite eras. So we said, let's play around. I mean, we said, play around with that aspect. And also, having grown up in Bangalore, we've all grown up on oxide floors, red oxide floors. And it was also around that era that oxides were quite predominant in Bangalore. So again, we kind of started working with masons to revive the whole oxide technology that once Karnataka was famous for. So effectively, not an inch of paint is used in this project. It is all oxides, and these corrugated walls are corrugated concrete, green concrete walls, and the roofs are in bolted red oxide cement. And the floor, of course, we used, again, local materials from Sadarali and Kadapa in these stripes. Sandeep?
Yeah, so there you can see the floor, which is Sadarali. So I think we felt really good about using everything was locally sourced. The furniture was locally sourced, and to kind of revive certain crafts which have been kind of lost along the way. But I think the idea was to kind of evoke a nostalgia amongst Bangaloreans for, it's for a bygone era, and what we imagined. Obviously, we hyped up the Art Deco nature of the space, because we saw some hints of Art Deco on the Indian Express building. But I think the idea was to kind of go back to an era and say that this is a place that you'd want to go to, dress up, and kind of really enjoy. And also, it was a time where we were seeing that the effort put into the interiors of restaurants was kind of waning, and people were just kind of doing a cement floor and hanging a light bulb, and they were saying that this is a restaurant interior. And we said, let's really kind of create something handcrafted and special for Bangalore. And
a sense of celebration,
So it really kind of evoked this a nostalgia for an imagined old Bangalore, at least from our minds. And I think what was interesting is that the space had to work during the day, and equally as a kind of a calm, sunlit space during breakfast and lunch, and then as a calm restaurant for dinner. But then also convert into a pulsating nightclub over weekends. And I think it kind of happened quite seamlessly in this space. Of course, pre-COVID. But I think there was a great degree of customization. And I think here we did this lovely chandelier, which was a resin and mild steel. And these kind of reminded us and it was a kind of an ode to the fruit trees of Bangalore. So that was really the inspiration for this piece. And that's the outside, which was also inspired by the High Court of Karnataka in the same street.
So I think with this project, you have addressed all the demographics of Bangalore. You have the young crowd in the evening, and you have the old Bangaloreans coming in for lunch. And I know it's a favorite of a lot of people, uh, especially all Bangaloreans. But and here it's almost magical what you've done. It's like time travel for everybody. So what inspires you? Like, what is the inspiration behind all these designs that we are seeing from all this creative work? What would you say?
Amresh and I travel a lot together, and of course individually with our families. But I think some of our travels have been excellent. We're constantly inspired. We have we jot down things that we see, and it obviously gets all stored at the back of our minds. And when we're on the drawing board, something or the other comes out. And I mean, I can just take a few instances of inspiration, which may have influenced some of our hospitality projects. Of course, I mean, Shiro, for one, is a project that most of you have gone to in Bangalore and Mumbai. It was in the Bombay Dyeing Mill, sadly no more in that space. But I think there was this dramatic space which we got in Bombay, initially in the Bombay Dyeing Mills. And I had taken so many trips to Bali by that time, and the whole landscape of Bali, especially of Ubud in the north of Bali, the statuary, the peace, the calm of that environment really inspired me. And it was after one of those visits that we came back, and our friends uh, commissioned us to design Shiro. And there was a great deal of customization, um, a great deal of customization, and we could have easily we wanted to do these larger than life statues, and we could have easily gone, we were actually even contemplating, should we get these statues from Bali? And there's no way we could have got stone statues from Bali.
Imagine the height of these were almost 16, 18, 20 feet, and the logistics of weight and the challenge of bringing them all the way from Bali.
So then we came across this idea that, we came across, Ganesh festival was around that time, and we said, oh my God, look at the skill we have at our doorstep in Bombay.
The scale of these.
The larger than life statuary Ganesh idols that they're able to make. And so we started visiting some of the slums where all the statues were being made. And then we finally commissioned, and this was thrilling for us to see multiple statues being made out of clay and then molded into fiberglass, etc., in these slums, and multiple sculptors working on this, sending us photographs, us visiting there. So I thought it was just really exciting, working with references. Obviously we had seen similar statues in Bali, but we kind of wanted to really expand the scale and the proportions. So this really became a wonderful, influences from all over South Asia, and friezes on the walls and larger than life statuary, and it was a kind of a very surreal, dreamlike space. And fortunately, you can see that over 15 years or so, the restaurant has not had much of a change. This is, this is the Bangalore space where we got an equally lofty volume of about 45, 50 feet. So um, it was really quite an experience doing this project. But the inspiration was really the travels to Bali. Another project which is really from 2004. I was in Florence in a plaza, and I saw this wonderful Yoji Yamamoto, the fashion designer, his show, and I just fell in love with the lips fabric. There were shirts suspended in that exhibition, and light was kind of coming through that shirt very beautifully. And the way he draped the fabric was just so fabulous. And we got commissioned by this film star Nagarjuna and other partners to do something very, very unique and different in Hyderabad. And we suspended thousands of meters of chiffon fabric from the ceiling on a very, very mundane ceiling, and we managed to actually, just by color changing light, LED light. Amrish, you want to talk about the color changing technology?
Yeah. So at that time, this whole LED had just made its mark in some of the, or we noticed it in some of the restaurants that we went to in Europe. And we said, we was thinking, why don't we use that technology in one of our projects? And so there were color changing LED light technology that we first used in FBAR, and this was the second project. And here actually played a larger role where the light, the touch of the button kind of defined the vibe of the space. So one could kind of change the vibe of the space by a touch of the button by assigning a certain color for a certain mood. So you could do early evenings in somber colors, and as the night progressed, it became more vibrant, and all was with the touch of a button. And that was quite a revelation at that time, because we kind of worked with technology as one of the main features in our designs.
Okay, Kavita.
Yeah, so I wanted to know more about collaborations that you do. I remember reading something that you did at the ID fair in Delhi, and that is what sparked this question.
Sure. I think again the office, the studio, there are architects, interior designers, and we've got graphic designers also in the studio, and we've always worked out of the same studio space. So I think this has lent to a lot of collaborations, and I can't touch on all of them because there was a time when most of our hospitality and office projects were which had environmental graphics, courtesy PSK. But one of the projects which may be closest to my heart is this tiny South India MTV office from 1998 that Tanya and I, we were just literally starting off practice, and we designed this tiny space on a shoestring budget, but Tanya used film poster art, which was completely kind of on its way out, and film poster artist, which was so skilled at that time to create these larger than life, cheeky images on the walls of the MTV office. And we used chatai on the floor and an auto rickshaw as the reception table. And I think the brief given to us at that time by Sunil Lulla, it was he was the director of MTV, says, do something that you would never do in a corporate environment. So we really delivered the diametric opposite of what of the safe corporate interior, and really played with regional cliches. And this was also a time when MTV was coming to India and realized that they had to contextualize and do much more local programming. So I think it really kind of worked well to explore context in this very unique way. The other collaboration which I'm quite proud of, and Amrish is too, is a table that Tanya, Amrish, and I designed. This is it's called the Teapoy. It's a three-legged table, as you might know. The origin of the word is tipaya, and in colonial India. And Tanya had designed this font, which is combining influences of the Devanagari and English script. And she had done this as her thesis, and it's written with a calligraphic pen. So we got inspired by the font, actually, by the script, and then created the table um, uh, out of this font. So it's a three-legged table, and it's in this highly lacquered. Um, um, it's MDF, which is kind of highly lacquered, and in three different colors: a mint, an aubergine, and an orange. And each of the legs uh, kind of delicately end up in a copper machined part. Uh, this had to be also dismantled, right, Amrish? So,
Yeah.
so we, yeah. So,
We also designed it in a way that it could be dismantled and flat packed.
and then the word teapoy was actually inscribed on the top of the table. So there was a lot of work that went in. We got the El Deco Adida award that year for the best furniture design. So that was really rewarding. Um, and then this is our design studio, um, and that same building which I showed you in the beginning of the presentation, we built this from scratch. And uh, this is a really a lovely collaboration again between architects and graphic designers. And we wanted a very warm space, a space that would feel like home, collaborative, friendly, lots of light, and for the long hours that the architects and interior designers and graphic designers put in. So we created a very homey environment for everyone. Lots of light, ventilation, cross ventilation coming through, so that you wouldn't use much of light bulbs during the day, and you wouldn't need air conditioning more than 1 or 2 months a year. And there was a lot of obviously graphic intervention. One of the nicest interventions were wherever we had openable windows, we had this lovely wooden jali, and the wooden jali was inspired by we had overhang chajjas, wooden jalis, so that you could actually clean the openable windows. You could get onto the ledge and clean them, and um,
And also the sorry, and also we didn't want grills for the openable windows. Many years ago, we had a couple of burglaries in the office. So we had to have that sense of security, but at the same time, we did not like the idea of grills. So after much deliberation, much debate, back and forth, we decided to kind of, why don't we do jalis instead? And that would
the jali was inspired by this a collection of tiles that Tanya and I had designed some years ago for Bharat Flooring, terrazzo tiles. It's called the Dash Dash Rod collection. So that was kind of taken into the wooden jali by the graphic designers, and it actually worked out quite beautifully. It's just pine wood which has been oiled and stained, and I must say it's kind of been really, really durable. And it allows a wonderful quality of light, filtered light through the day into our studio space. And the materiality of the office is also very tactile. We've got kind of exposed white brick. We've got fine shuttered concrete. We've got Kerala tiles on the roof, street concrete on the floor. So it's a very kind of tactile materiality. And one of the highlights is this staircase, again, that goes through the different floors. And the the graphic designers and Tanya kind of spearheaded this. Uh, uh, I think we have always been inspired by the Eames crow, the Charles and Ray Eames. They have, they designed this crow, and the crow from our childhood in Calcutta, because the crow was such a visually an important part of the urban streetscape in Kolkata when we were growing up, and would actually perch on telephone wires, rambling telephone wires, and cows and etc. So this is a lovely depiction of the Eames crow flying through Indian landscapes, pecking on a marigold, sitting on a cow. So it's a lovely narrative actually that goes right through the staircase, and that's the office at night. The last project, which I'm going to just show you as a collaborative project, and I think this is a great collaboration that happened at India Design ID. I can't believe that we actually did all this in February of this year, and then COVID happened after that. But all this energy happened before, really in the beginning of this year, and we actually created this wonderful exhibition called "What's Your Story," which was truly a collaborative effort between two offices, Khosla Associates and TSK Design, but also a curatorial effort between Tanya and myself to look at objects that have a reason to exist. And we really looked at 30 objects from around the country, and we created 6 different pods, handcrafted luxury. We named them different, titles: handcrafted luxury, whimsy and joy, cost and accessibility. And we asked the important questions: why do we consume what we consume, and why do we design what we design? In such where there's such surplus in the world today of objects and design objects, should an object really have a reason to exist in this world? And we chose 30 objects that had a story to tell, and even the exhibition was with bold graphics on these walls. The exhibition, all the walls were clad with a very eco-conscious material called Artemis, which is really tiles made out of stone dust by a startup company in Ahmedabad. So I think there was great exploration of objects that really have some reason to be, and that have meaning either through their production methods or their processes, their sustainability. Maybe they are just cost effective, and they reach out to many people. So this was really an in-depth. It took a lot of time to curate the show, about 6 months to curate it, but 1 month of construction in the factory, and literally 48 hours. These guys put it up in the exhibition grounds. We were amazed because we're not used to seeing things happen so fast. Amrish, that was a hell of an experience, wasn't it?
Totally. And it's also actually, in the end, what was nice was the way it all came together. The curation part I'm talking about is that when people came, they were also kind of, they realized there's such a wealth of good stuff in our own country. And I think that's where the curation was so good in that one could really understand the real wealth of what is available here.
Yeah, I think we have so much wealth, especially our crafts that we have in our country, and really we need to look more inwards than outwards. And this fascination with foreign, goods. I think if that one lesson that's via COVID is that we look inwards.
I'm actually surprised to think that even pre-COVID, this exhibition was so relevant. We were asking the right questions about excessive consumption on this planet, and we somehow also gravitated. All the 30 objects, at least a majority of them were either sustaining communities, or they were handcrafted. and they were, probably asking or ticking off the right boxes, and when you ask the right questions, they were mostly handmade. And I'm really glad we did this show because it got people thinking. And that's the end of the presentation, and we'd be happy to take any questions.
So yes, that it was a fascinating journey.
Get me off the presenter maybe. Yeah.
Okay, sure.
So thank you for sharing your journey of 25 years. Very fascinating. Lot of lessons. I especially like the fact that when you went all the way to Maldives, you actually first built accommodation for the team, the construction team that was going to be staying there, and need versus greed, how much you consume, where you get your all your materials from, the context. But yes, we have a lot of questions. So Satish, shall we get started with them?
Yes, I think that was equally amazing for all of us to be listening to all the narration, the stories, the anecdotes, the little incidents on site, and the challenges that they faced. Amazing. So we have a lot of questions. I'll try to skim through some of the critical ones. The first one is from Janki Chawda. Good evening, all. Such a pleasure to be in your company. My question is for Mr. Sandeep. How important was your rendezvous with art? I believe you said that art was part of your formal education. Correct me if I'm wrong. And what impact did it have on your architectural work?
I think that's a very good question. I started actually, I went to college actually in the States to study fine art. And I was a drawing major, and I was doing economics and drawing and painting, and then stumbled on some architectural classes, and that's how I got into the world of architecture, took some architectural history classes. But art has been something very dear to me in terms of visiting museums all my life. And then I think when I was in the States, my interaction, and I started dating Tanya, and then we eventually got married. She was a graphic designer. She was also an artist, and she was studying sculpture as one of the subjects at Mount Holyoke College at that time, and then she went on to do a master's, an MFA at Yale in graphic design. So these have been very, very strong influences. Her mother has been a sculptor, and a glass artist all her life. So art has been around me as I was growing up, in my household, also in my education. It has been there. And then years of being married to Tanya have got me very, very sensitized to graphic design and color. I would say I owe a lot of my color sensibility to that, because subconsciously, you're always kind of talking about color and design and contemporary art and fashion and all these influences. They just kind of come together. I hope I've been able to answer your question.
Great. So I'll move on to the next one. This seems to be the question that's on many people's minds now because of the current scenario. Is architecture still relevant profession? Because when every industry is getting into industrial revolution 4, what about us?
Architecture is definitely relevant even now, because you need your architecture kind of defines your space, where you work, where you sleep, where you for every activity of your life.
True.
I think it's more relevant now than ever, because I think the spaces that we create for ourselves really define us. And I think if you have a beautiful space to be in, your entire mood and the way you kind of perceive the world can change. So I think it's extremely crucial. In fact, we have found over this entire lockdown, this period, that people have really started valuing their spaces. because they're kind of locked down in that space. And does my space give me enough natural light? And is it kind of responding to nature? Is it what kind of colors do I have in my space? And people really are thinking about this more than ever before. So I think architecture and interiors will continue to have a very, very crucial role in human behavior.
Right. That was a question from Kranti Manam. Now the next question is from Chaitali Chaudhary. Were any leakage problems faced at the Sahyadri project with respect to the skylights? That is also an area with high rainfall. Also, were there any humidity issues faced due to the stone cladding?
So there were no, initially we did have some issues with the skylight, but then that was before after the construction of the skylight and before the finishing of the interiors. But we could kind of handle it. It was a small leakage because of the waterproofing, but beyond that we didn't have any leakage because we cast the skylight also with the slab as one system. So we did not have joints there to allow for the thing to leak. The other thing, the next question for the remember Sandeep spoke about that gap in between the slab and the walls. That was purely again to kind of keep the temperatures moderate through the year and through the house, and that allowed the humidity levels to fall down, and the stone also allowed us to kind of insulate it during winters, because winters are also quite cold there.
Okay. The next question also is from Janki Chawda. It's that we have a relatively new movement in the field of architecture called the tiny house movement. It encourages the building of small pro-environmental homes. It is also the need of the environment. How would you like to guide the new gen architects with respect to this movement and its impact on housing, mass and personal bungalows, and construction in general? Long question. She's talking about the tiny house movement.
Well, I think there is definitely something to say about that. And as I spoke about, we are, sometimes get the opportunity to do small homes, and we are sometimes reining back our clients and saying, why do you want to do a 20,000 square foot home or a 15,000 square foot home? Because over the years, we found that spaces don't get utilized enough. Families, kids go off, to college, to school, they get on with their lives, and ultimately you are left with a large home with just maybe 2 people living in there. Household help is becoming increasingly difficult to manage. So I think there is merit in homes which are compact, which are extremely functional, which are durable and don't require a huge amount of maintenance. So of course, as architects, we endorse those thoughts, but ultimately there is still in the world people who want to build very, very large. But hopefully people will kind of, at least after what the world is going through right now, they might kind of reset that expectation and hopefully think a little bit more about the choices they make in terms of being a little more frugal. So I think frugality is good, sustainability is good, working locally is good. And I think the small movement, the house movement is probably here to stay.
Yeah, the next question is from Amaresh Kumar. What are the safety precautions you had taken while building that island villas in the situation of emergency such as tsunami or anything? It would also have raised the cost of construction.
Yeah. So basically, the structural systems for the water villas was designed in a way that it could take certain amount of badgering. Of course, not from tsunami, because it is out in the middle of the ocean, and No, in terms of the construction facility, I mean, on the island itself, we did kind of do with very lightweight materials and made sure that the what do you call the systems were in place, but not so
I
much.
also recall, Amrish, that there was, one of the plants on the island, indigenous to the island, which was called the screw pine, which was very much on the periphery, just after the sand, created a very natural barrier uh, uh, on the periphery of the island, and we were kind of building slightly in. So I think the natural vegetation and augmenting that vegetation with our landscaping was creating a bit of a natural barrier. But that's pretty much what we did in terms uh, of protection, was mostly with landscaping.
Okay, there are quite a few questions further. Yeah, now this is from Zubair. Sandeep, Amresh, great presentation. Thanks for taking to your journey. I mean, taking us through your journey in these last few years. How do you see your work changing during and post this COVID situation? What are your thoughts and insights into the future of architecture and interiors?
Amrish,
Yeah, that's
I
it.
take it.
Yeah. Sorry, what was the question again?
Yeah, basically, first part is just a compliment, and then how do you see work changing during and post COVID, and how do you advise future architecture and interior professionals?
Okay. So during COVID, now what we have realized is that life has to go on, but at the same time, you need to be safe. So we're all working from home, our staff and ourselves. Again, with the technology available at our fingertips now, we are virtually connected with all our staff, with our sites. We're doing video calls, where our outstation sites. Not all of them have started. The ones that have started, we have kind of put all the protocols in place for the safety of the workers. We are allowing only one agency at a time to work, so there is no mixing of too many different groups of people coming from different parts of the city. We ourselves are doing all our presentations and our internal discussions or virtually, you know. So I think we are also in that phase of trying and experimenting to see what can work for us and what will not work for us. So I think it's an ongoing kind of process of experimenting, but at the same time we have kind of slowly getting used to the virtual life.
Yeah, and I think it's surprising that when you actually make presentations, and if you tend to be and it's all on Zoom, you tend to be a little more organized. And we've had some quite successful presentations over the past few months, all virtually. And I think we're also thinking in our minds, did we really need to travel that much? Did we have to go to every site meeting? Did we have to meet every time, we went to meet a client? We would just go morning, come back in the evening. Could some of those things have been done? Maybe 1 out of 3 site visits were probably necessary, 1 out of 3 meetings with a client. So it might change the way we work in the future for sure. I think we've got a taste of working virtually. We can see that it's getting better and better. I, for one, am sketching a lot on the iPad with a pencil. It's quite instant. You sketch, you send it to your team. So we are kind of finding new ways of using technology in good ways. So I think in the future also some of it will be here to stay, and I think the one thing that I see is that travel will come down, I feel.
Wonderful. I think we are close to our closing hour. We'll take 2 more questions last. Kavita?
And travel coming down even within your city is good. So if at every meeting that we don't have to go across town and congest the roads more and more, it's just beneficial to the city. So
You're saying
Right.
Yeah, it's amazing how much work can be achieved virtually, and only essential travel, need happen. It's
and
good for the
also
city.
I was
It's
thinking
good
like
for
that.
the environment.
yeah. So then also one more thing we did notice was the morale of the staff working from home, and seems to be much better because they're
Better.
with their, yeah, they're with their family, they're spending time at home, but at the same time getting the work done. That work-life balance that many find difficult to kind of
But also Khosla
manage.
Associates, at our office, Amaresh and I have always not been we've never kind of been on people's cases about their work. I think all our team leaders and all the teams, the junior architects, the senior architects, everyone knows their responsibilities. If there's a presentation, there's a presentation. And I think everyone takes it seriously. So, we've never had to kind of breathe down
Not,
anyone's neck. So, working virtually or not, we know that everyone is working hard. And so
Right.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for everybody to reevaluate their design philosophy, the methods, uh, the things that are important in life, and get time and maybe space out the work. Yes, things are going to slow down, but maybe we were going too fast anyway to begin with.
I absolutely agree with you.
True. So one question from Chaitali, it's what would you like to say to students of architecture who have graduated this and last year in terms of beginning their career during this pandemic time?
Well, I would say don't be in too much of a hurry, because you might have graduated and you're about to graduate. I tell my daughter the same thing. She's so eager to get back to the US to college, and I'm kind of reining her back and saying, what will happen if you lose 6 months in your life? You're young, and it's not a big deal. So even if you started your career 6 months later, it's not the end of the world. It's all about perspective, isn't it? So I mean, or if
Yeah.
you went
So
slow for the first 6 months, it's not the end of the world. We are going through a pandemic, and it is the reality. So as long as you kind of do things that you really enjoy in this time, rather than really be frustrated that I'm coming out of college and trying to start a career in a bad phase. Um, so um, so I just feel that um, it's good to have perspective in these times, and you know keep engaged, keep very busy, and watch as less news as possible, because that's what really messes everyone up, is this constant kind of updates on WhatsApp about what's happening in the world. Yeah. So
then
I'm limiting my news intake to 10 minutes a day, which really keeps me kind of mentally sane.
okay, I think we'll restrict the question to the last one because there are quite a few comments and questions still coming. How do you condense your vast ideas about art and aesthetic to convince your clients to build what you believe in? That's Rahul Jain. Shall I repeat?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So how do you condense your vast ideas about art and aesthetic to convince your clients to build what you believe in them building?
Well, I think the clients are coming to us because of a certain aesthetic, because there is an existing portfolio of work. So one is, of course, imagining that people who are coming to uh, get something designed by us have a certain set of expectations already. So maybe half the battle is won because they do see eye to eye. So there's not that much convincing. But then I think Amrish and I have always believed one thing, is that either we convince clients with an idea, and we go with, if we believe in something very strongly, we propose it. If we are convinced by the clients otherwise, we accept that. So what do you say, Amrish?
Yeah, so there are, very true. But also at the same time, Sandeep and me debate, discuss, critique internally quite a bit of our design before it goes to the client. So we have kind of looked at all the loopholes or looked at all the possibilities and explored all possibilities. And also this happens, we spend a lot of time with the clients, understanding their needs, understanding their lifestyles if you're making a home for them. So all these aspects, so before we actually present the first cut to the clients, we have had 1 month of interaction, about a month of deliberation, and then present the ideas to the client.
Great. So with that, we'll end the Q&A because we are 6 or 7 minutes past the deadline. I would like to quickly wrap it up. So I would request all our viewers to please give a virtual round of applause. We cannot see it, but I'm sure all of you are celebrating. Yeah, and awesome. Thank you. So ladies and gentlemen, before we wrap up, a big thank you from all of us at Triple ID BRC to our co-host Fab Biennale, Sarita Vijayan and Deepal, media partner Living Tech, and our sponsors for the day, Quattrolux. Ambika, please convey our thanks to Rohit Sampad and Siddharth Prakash as well. The proceeds of these programs are being used to support Samriddhi, an NGO for lending a helping hand to migrant workers. At Triple ID, we are excited to announce that this year's Triple ID Awards has received over 1,000 registrations, and we are really looking forward to the winners. We thank all of our delegate participants for joining us this evening. At Triple ID's various chapters nationwide, we are conducting a membership drive. So anyone who wants to become a member, please reach out to our websites or offices across the country. And we are compiling a big data, and you can participate in more such exciting events in the future. Our next session is on 18th of July, Saturday at 4 p.m. titled Artisanal, a presentation by Shruti Jaipuria, Atul Johari, and Suman Rodham. Block your calendar and do remember to tune in, be seated 5 minutes prior. See you all in the next session. And thank you so very much, Sandeep and Amaresh, for sharing so much of your experience with us. And thank you, Kavita, for anchoring this very beautifully. Namaste, and thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Kavita.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. It was a pleasure.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. See you guys. Bye.
See you. Bye.